If you have found yourself in your doom knitting cycle, put the needles down, walk away, go take a break, have a snack, pick up a different project, cast on something new even. That's okay. And maybe you needed to hear that from me today because I needed to hear it too. I feel so cute today.
I'm Nora, and this is also known as Nora Knits.
Hello there, I'm Nora, and you're watching, also known as Nora Knits. Thank you so much for joining me today for podcast episode 101. I'm going to celebrate a little bit today since podcast 100 just flew right past me without me even noticing. So I thought 101 Dalmatians was just as significant as 100 episodes. So let me start by saying thank you so much to everyone who has been around for these 100 podcast episodes. It is uncanny to me that it's already been that many. And with other videos in between, I genuinely cannot believe I've been doing this that long at this point. But I am so grateful for those of you who have been here since the beginning, to everyone who is new here, and anyone who has tuned in and out along the way. I really do appreciate you being here to join me on my knitting journey. In celebration of this, if you had seen my knitting plans video for the year, you will know that I am kind of wrapping up the 2025 From the Vault challenge by announcing 5 giveaway winners here today. So if you see your name on the screen, congratulations. You are one of the winners from 2025 From the Vault. If you could please email me with the pattern of your choice down below, I will get that gifted to you on Ravelry as soon as possible. And I also have one kind of random winner here. Weeks, maybe months back now, just around the holidays, I had done a Teddy Blake giveaway, and there was a little bit of a mix up with the rules and everything, the eligibility to win that one. But because it was the holidays, I just didn't have the mental capacity to make it right. And so I actually have a new winner for this Teddy Blake wallet that you see on the screen here. So if you see your name on the screen, please email me. And thank you so much to everyone who participated in the 2025 From the Vault challenge. Now, back to 2026, it has been an interesting start for me and my knitting. And so I'm going to start today with a little bit of a ramble, and then I will get into some more of my finished objects, my whips, all of that sort of stuff. So get cozy for this one, guys. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Before I get into what I'm wearing, if you follow me on Instagram, then you may have caught the Instagram story that I literally posted in real time earlier today, where I was telling you that I was in the middle of trying to figure out how to execute this design idea that I had. And this started a few days ago. I kind of got started on this design idea. I figured out like the first half of it. And then I thought, all right, instead of just trying to figure the whole thing out, let me get started. And then when I reach that point, I will reevaluate and figure out the next step then. So I reached that point last night and I was stumped. I was working for hours last night trying to figure this out, and I woke up with it on my mind this morning, and I sat down for more hours. I was trying to figure it out, and I was hitting this roadblock time and time again, but I kept feeling like I was on the precipice of something, and I knew I had today to film and edit a video, so I was kind of at this point where I was thinking, I want so badly to sit here and just keep trying because it's going to work eventually. On the other hand, I want to hold my obligation to film and post these videos, which I love to do, but I'm sure as a creative, you know, when you get into that mindset, it's like, it's right there and you want to figure it out so badly. And I feel like I have a new term that I'm going to coin. We all know what doom scrolling is, when you're just sitting there scrolling, and you're sucked into rabbit hole after rabbit hole, and you keep saying one more post. Well, that was me. I was doom knitting, continuously trying something. It wasn't working, and I thought, but the next thing that I try, I will figure this out. And that's good. That's really good to keep that momentum alive. But at some point, you just need to put the needles down and say, it's not happening at this moment. And in fact, the doom knitting is not leading to anything positive. As much as I thought that it was or that it could, it really was just creating this resentment, and it was creating a sense of doubt rather than encouragement in myself. And so it was ultimately becoming more and more negative. And as a few of you did call out on my Instagram post, where I was basically saying, what do you want me to do? And what do you think I should do? Should I do the video, or should I stick with this design thing and just hammer down on it today? A few of you said, like, I think you need the break. I think you're asking us to validate you taking a break from your design idea, and you should just go ahead and make a video. So that's what I'm doing here. I think that was a little bit of a spoiler to say I'm not going to show you yet what that design is that I'm working on, because I am still in this figuring it out stage. And I don't know if you've ever done like a crossword puzzle or something, and maybe you have that word that you just haven't figured out yet, and you could go Google it, and you could go ask somebody what it is, but like you're gonna let it sit on the kitchen table for a couple days till the word comes to you. That's the stage I'm in. I'm being a little stubborn, so I'm going to keep it a secret for right now, but I'll tell you what, I'm having a good time and it looks awesome at the moment. I just need to figure out this one thing. So hopefully I will today, but all of that to say, if you have found yourself in your doom knitting cycle, put the needles down, walk away, go take a break, have a snack, pick up a different project, cast on something new even, that's okay. And maybe you needed to hear that from me today, because I needed to hear it too. Now, onto what I'm wearing. I feel so cute today. I was channeling my inner Lizzie McGuire, kind of. I actually feel like I'm channeling my inner, was her friend's name Miranda? I feel Miranda from Lizzie McGuire today. I'm feeling super, super cute in my Peony vest by Annie Germain of Annie Sews. She's so popular right now for those sailor slippers. Well, she was on my radar long before those came out with this Peony vest. So much so, I was a fan of this vest before it was even a knitting pattern, and it was something that she was just knitting custom orders for and selling, and I was like, please, please, please put the pattern out. So it's been on my radar since the very beginning, and I'm thrilled to have knit it up. In last week's podcast, you will have seen that I was at a turning point with this project where I was feeling that the fit was just looking very, very awkward. And for full context, I'm knitting this out of Nora Silk Garden. I had done a gauge swatch, as one should, but when I saw that my gauge was slightly off, rather than re-swatching, I just kind of made a hypothesis, an educated guess, let's try this, and started the project. In doing so, I upped my needle size, and I went up to the neck size and the pattern that I probably would have knit otherwise. I, off the top of my head, can't remember. I think I knit the size 4. But when I had joined under the arms, and that was about where I was in the last podcast, I felt that the armhole looked super deep, and also the width of everything up here I thought looked very appropriate for my size. However, where it was time to cast on stitches under the arms, I felt like it was way off for me. So I took a step back and I said, this is the year of making things right, so I'm going to. I frogged back to the point of where the front and back join under the arm. And my first idea was, let me just join the front and back without casting on all of the stitches that I'm supposed to for my size. So I actually chose the number for the smallest size. That's how many stitches I cast on under my arm, because I couldn't quite tell if it was just an arm depth situation or if it was the width of the body. So this was the easiest first step to take. Once I did that, I could see immediately that it wildly, hugely changed the look of the vest for the better. So I felt confident moving forward. Now, at the same time, I had been looking at Ravelry photos, and a few of you pointed this out in the comments as well. And it's just so funny, those little design details that you don't clock until you're working on it and you're like, this doesn't look quite right. And I thought it was a me issue, when in reality, the design itself has very deep armholes, deeper than I would really want for this garment. So it's not that it's a design flaw, it was just a personal opinion thing. I felt that those armholes were too deep. So rather than doing all of the figuring out of how to reknit the curvy button band with going back and shortening the armhole, I thought, and someone else had this idea, and I was like, you totally read my mind, that instead I could work some short rows in the ribbing for my armholes to make under the arm just a little bit of a taller ribbing versus up at the top of the armhole where it's the standard rows. So all of the ribbing on mine is a little bit funky. I did follow the exact instructions for the button band. I did 3 fewer rows on the collar than what was instructed in the pattern because I felt that had I done all 3, I would have had a very snug neckline, and I just didn't really want that for myself. The hem, I did the recommended number of ribbing rows. And then for my armholes, I picked up my stitches. I do believe that I picked up fewer than what the pattern called for. I will put these numbers on the screen here. I just realized that my iPad is dead, so it's charging while I just rattle some things off the top of my head. So if there are more detailed notes, I'll put them on the screen next to me here. I picked up the stitches, and then I worked one full round of knit 1x1 rib. At that point, I actually cut my yarn and I started at the, I should have put this on the hanger for this part. This is like the worst way to show this. But I cut the yarn and then started at like 10 stitches past my beginning of round marker so that I could work a row going this way, a row going this way, working a few stitches past where I started, working this way, a few stitches past where I started, working this way, a few stitches past where I started, until I was satisfied with the additional height of ribbing I would be adding, knowing that as I continued, I was going to be working the, I think it's 7 rows of ribbing up here. So I knew I still had to do something like 6 rows of ribbing once I finished the short rows. So once I was happy with the additional height and I felt like adding those extra 6 rows would be a good spot, that was when I then started to go fully around the circumference of the armhole. I also, at the same time, was decreasing at my beginning of round stitch just to further kind of cinch in the armhole. In hindsight, I could have done this more cleanly with like a central double decrease or something like that. I was like eating away at knits and purls and no rhyme or reason. I figured it's under my arm. I don't really care about it. And in the end, I think it looks perfect. It's fitting perfectly. I am thrilled with the way that it's turned out. As far as bind offs go, I did the sewn bind off on all of these things, but the only place I actually had done setup rows was on the hem because I was afraid of it flaring out. Now, the one thing I'm not 100% happy with in the fit of this garment at the moment is actually the length of it. I do think that mine could stand to be like 1.5 inches shorter than it is. For right now, I'm styling it with the last couple of buttons undone, and I think that that makes it very wearable at the length that it is right now. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the future you caught me ripping back and shortening this a little bit. Now, if I were to do that, my bottom button would no longer be centered. So the top and the bottom button are actually centered on the cardigan, while all of the others kind of wiggle and waggle around. But if I were to rip back, I would probably just leave my last button off center, as I don't think it would bother me all that much. And I do tend to prefer to wear these button-up tops with the last button unbuttoned. I don't know why, but I just don't think it would really matter enough to redo the whole thing to fix that one little detail. So I think that that's everything I have to say. I'm thrilled with the way everything has turned out. I used less yarn than I thought I was going to have to. Now, obviously, that's probably because I did nip out that extra yarn from the body, but my fear going into this was that I didn't have enough yarn and I thought I was going to need to order more. And in the end, I did not have to, and I even have some left over. So this is just a huge win. I finished it off with these beautiful pearl shell, what are these? Mother of pearl shell buttons. And I just used some embroidery floss. I have a big bag of embroidery thread from way back in my like friendship bracelet making days. And anytime I go to put buttons on something, I literally just grab out whatever colors I think are going to work best. And in this case, I wound up going with just a light pink to kind of pick up on and enhance the pinky colors in this vest, while also staying kind of neutral to the buttons. But I do always sew on my buttons with embroidery thread unless I really feel like it needs the matching yarn or something. I don't know why, that's just kind of what I've always done. So there we have it. I styled it today over top of my lace top. I will actually link this in the description box. I've talked about it before. It's just a little polyester thing. So I'm not crazy about the quality of it, but it's just from Amazon. And I think it's a super cute way to style your knits in just a little bit of a different way. So I think that this is going to be a fun outfit to wear in the spring. I'm so happy. Let's get into the finished object stats. This is the Peony vest by Annie Germain. The pattern on Ravelry costs about $10.02. It was not in my pattern library. It was not gifted. The yarn that I used was Nora Silk Garden in the colorway 84 Otaru, and it was in my stash. The full price per skein from the yarn shop I had purchased it at would be about $14.95. However, I unfortunately purchased this one during a yarn shop closing sale, and so I did get a good discount on it. It was, for me, $8.97 per skein. That being said, I did tap into about 6 skeins, and that is for the whole vest plus the swatch. And so it's barely 6. I really think I could have squeezed it out in 5 if I ripped out my swatch, but 6 skeins were tapped into. With that, my full price yarn total would have been $89.70, but with the discount, my yarn total is $53.82. The additional expenses I had here are the buttons, which I did actually have in my stash from one of my New York City trips. Now, this is even overshooting it, but I'm going to guesstimate them to be about $1 total for the buttons. And so my full price project total, had I paid for everything at full price, would have been about $100.72. However, my total pattern plus yarn plus buttons for me came out to about $64.84. And that's for a project that wound up being on my needles for just 17 days, making my cost per day about $3.81. So overall, probably a little bit pricier than I would have liked for a vest, but this yarn was so special. It was something I'd always wanted to work with, and I am not disappointed by any means. I'm so thrilled to have this. And that is everything with my Peony vest by Annie Sews, Annie Germain. If you have any questions about this one, please do let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer you. Moving on to the next project that was going from flop to, I guess, kind of fixed in this episode, which I also just want to say thanks to everyone who commented in the last podcast, sharing your experience with these little fails this year. I think a lot of us were just starting off the year maybe a little hastily, and we were so excited to get things on the needles, and that came back to bite us. But it did feel good to know that I wasn't alone, and I know some of you mentioned the same. So that's kind of the whole point of this channel, is sharing all of these obstacles I hit along the way to help myself become a better knitter. Maybe you'll become a better knitter by hearing about my challenges and working through them with me. So it's just another cool reason to have this channel. But this project is my jelly top by May Bruns, and this was one that I had started and frogged and then realized I didn't actually need to frog it. And it's back on the needles now, but I have no regrets. Let me put her onto Helena the Hanger if I can, and I'll tell you a little bit more. Okay, here is the newly updated jelly top. What a journey. I do still have all of the pieces from the last one here, and I've been referencing this as I go. So in my original top, I had knit down to the underarm join. I knit beyond that a few repeats of this ruching repeat row, and then went to go do the sleeves. And in picking up stitches, I ran into an issue of the pickup rate, and it led me to believe that I had an additional row in an additional repeat in my top than I should have had. The pattern states once you've finished the back, it tells you you now have 5 repeats. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is past the point where I've already joined in the round. Then you move to the front, and it never recaps with you to say, now you should have this many repeats on the front. So I had followed the pattern. I went to pick up those stitches, ran into a problem, was counting things, and figured I was wrong. And turns out the math I did was wrong, or the way I read it then was wrong. However, I took advantage of that opportunity because my original version, even though I was knitting it in the size 6 when really my size would be a size 4, I felt like the stretch I was getting was eliminating all of the ruching. So while it did fit, I felt like I wasn't getting that fun ruching effect with it. So I took advantage of having to start over to size up. I cast on for the size 7. However, I followed all of the increasing instructions for this size 9. And I did that for both the front and the back. In my original version, I had modified my neckline to make it sit a little bit higher. And I decided in the new version that I wasn't going to do that because I was nervous that maybe that was where I had gone wrong with my row issue. Now, as I was following the instructions for this second version of the top and realizing I was once again going to wind up with 5 repeats on the front, I was like, what's going on here? So I think what happened here is that when it comes to picking up stitches for the sleeves, there's a point where it references the shoulder seam. And the shoulder seam of this top is not actually symmetrical. So it doesn't actually sit on the shoulder. I now know. It looks to me, and this is all subject to be wrong when I get to the sleeves again and go through this because I'm just a little confused right now. What it seems like is that even though most sweaters or top constructions that I'm used to now, usually there's a way that the back is built up so that it sits kind of higher on the back of your neck and you wind up with more of a scoop in the front, and that's supposed to make everything just sit and lay nicer. Sometimes you do still have your seam sitting somewhere on the back of your shoulder, and that all just kind of depends. In this case, though, it appears that the front and the back are completely mirror images of each other. You have a dip in the front the same way that you have a dip in the back. So this is the front neckline. and this is the back neckline. The only difference right now is that the back neckline, you actually start with your smaller needle. The way you're making this stitch pattern is using a bigger needle and increases, and then a smaller needle and decreases. And so the back just has a couple of those rows in the smaller needle, but the front doesn't yet. That's why it's kind of flaring. But once that's done with the ribbing or whatever neck finishing you do, they are symmetrical. However, the shoulder seam where you picked up stitches is sitting on the back of the shoulder. So you might even be able to see here my marker. That was actually where I had picked up stitches. And you can see here that it's sitting on the back in line with this back neckline, and that scoops down just as much as it does in the front. So I'm curious to see how this is going to fit when it's all said and done. I think what's going to wind up happening is it is going to be a top that wants to kind of pull back and pull down because it doesn't have anything that builds up the back to hold it forward. But right now, I genuinely just cannot tell if that's the case. And that was why I wanted to just follow the pattern for the neckline instead of raising it like I thought that I had wanted to do in this version here. I think that that was really throwing me off as far as where I thought this should all be sitting and then where it ultimately did sit in the end. I think that this is going to be a situation where in the end, I'm probably not going to be 100% satisfied. That could change. But based on what I'm realizing as I go this second time around, I feel like there are little things with the fit that are going to be a problem, but I don't feel confident enough to fix them or change them until I have the whole garment and see how it fits. So this is 100% going to be a project that I will say I will keep you posted on modifications I would make a second time around. And I hope I still enjoy this process because I did have an idea for a summer version of this top. And if that's the case, I think we should do a little knit along so that we can work through those challenges together if I think that there are some modifications that would make the fit better. Speaking of fit, having done the increases for the size 9, that is the largest size in the pattern too. So that's interesting to me. I know that this is fitting right now and I will try it on in the next podcast episode. I still think I'm getting a bit of stretch around the bust that's just losing some of that ruched texture that I want that much more. But maybe that's another thing that in my list of potential second time around modifications, we could figure that out to get I really want to see the ruched texture all around. I don't ever want to lose that. And so I know that that's anticipated in the pattern, that it's stretchy, it fits, you're going to see the ruching. But if you think of like those crimpy little bubble tops that they used to sell at like Rite Aid, and they literally sold them in a little ball and they fit everybody. Sure, I could put one of those tops on, but it would just look like a wrinkly t-shirt on me. Whereas someone who would say knit this in a size 1, if they had put on that wrinkly, crinkly t-shirt, it would have that really cool, bubbly, wrinkly, crinkly effect. I kind of feel like that's what's going on here, but I also don't want to speak too soon because I'm not done yet. So we will see. The good news is I got back to the point where I was really eager to, which was under the arm. And so I'm going to once again follow my plan of finishing out the current ball of yarn I'm working with. This is the We Are Knitters Touch Me Mohair. And once I'm done with this ball, I'm going to go back to the sleeves and pick up those stitches, and hopefully that all works out this time around. When it comes to the sleeves, my following the increases did not change the depth of my armhole, and so I'm going to stick with the pick up rate and everything for the size 7. At the end, I'm going to have to make sure to put some good notes in my Ravelry because we're really doing things over here, but it has been a fun challenge to figure this out. At this point, we're just working until this ball of yarn disappears. So that is where we're at with the jelly top. As of today, it has been 36 days since I started this project. And yes, that was since I started the first one, but I feel like I have to factor that into the timeline of this garment. So that's my jelly top by May Knits. For a little while there, I was really feeling like all of my knits were super involved and I didn't have anything mindless. And so getting through the sleeves on my next project has been my mindless knitting. So while it has not received the most attention, it is so nice to have it when I need it. That is my Chantilly top by Laura Penrose. I'm knitting mine out of Valley Yarns Alpaca Silk, held triple in their black colorway. I think I could get this onto Helena's. Let's see. So this is another project that was in some turmoil last podcast. I am currently ignoring the issues I think I'm going to face with the twisted rib and the bind off on this, in favor of getting through the sleeves and getting this all blocked, because if I have to rip that out, it doesn't affect the other elements here. Now, I think one of the things that I mentioned in that last podcast was the fact that I wasn't really sure yet how I wanted to finish my sleeves or do my cuffs. Did I want them to be twisted rib? Did I want them to be longer, shorter? Did I want them to balloon, taper? And then it came to me while I was editing that video, and I thought of my ranunculus. And those sleeves have just the slightest little balloon and an I-cord finish. And I thought, that is what I want. I want an I-cord finish on these sleeves. I think that's going to keep it a little bit more blousy and will ultimately give me the look that I'm hoping to achieve a little bit better. So where this stands right now is that my right sleeve is done-ish. It has not yet received that I-cord treatment or any decreasing that I think it might need. It is just hanging out on some try-it-on tubing while I knit the second sleeve to match. My thought here being that I'm going to kind of get the second sleeve to the same point. That's what's acting as my mindless knitting at the moment. So I don't want to think too much about that. I just want to knit that stockinette tube until it matches the length of this one. Then I will go and do the collar while that sleeve also sits on try-it-on tubing, just like this one. That way, if I see any differences in the fit once the collar's on, if it sits on my shoulders a little bit differently, it might affect the sleeve length more than I anticipate or less than I anticipate. So I will be in full control to make any alterations to the length of the sleeves once that collar is done. That's just kind of my thought process here right now. So I'm really eager to start the collar here, but as you could tell, all of my projects have been just more involved than I feel like they should be. So we're in stockinette sleeve island and I'm okay with it. It looks like I'm about halfway through this second sleeve. So hopefully by the next time we chat about this, you'll be seeing a collar here. And then once everything is said and done, I will probably give this full project a block before I make any final decisions about the twisted rib that is seeming too tight at the moment. Totally my fault, no one else's. But I'm just gonna wait until it's blocked because maybe it won't be an issue at all. We'll see. That's really all I have to say about this right now. And this one's been on the needles for 39 days. All right, and last but not least here, my friends, let me tell you about Dad's sweater vest, Papa Knits birthday vest. His birthday has now come and gone, and I will tell you that the vest was very obviously not finished in time. However, it did not matter one bit because there was absolutely no way my vest could compare to the gift of his very first granddaughter for his birthday. My sister had a baby. I am officially an aunt. I am thriving in this role and I am absolutely in love with my little niece. My sister and the baby are both also thriving. Everyone's doing so well. And so that's also kind of been taking up a lot of my free time. I will stare at this little baby as long as my sister allows me to. So I had no hard feelings about not finishing Dad's vest in time because it simply could not measure up to that kind of birthday present. Instead, we got breakfast. And I showed him where we were at, and he was very excited about it. So that was kind of fun. It's the first time I've actually shown my dad any progress on one of these birthday knits. So it was cool to show him a little behind the scenes. But that means it's been on the try it on tubing because I haven't worked on it since I showed it to him. I thought it would be nice to just leave it this way to show you guys here today, because once it comes off the try it on tubing, it is not going back on until it's done. Here it is. I think it looks fantastic. If you're new around here, I am knitting my dad a self-drafted Intarsia Argyle vest for his birthday, and I'm knitting this bottom up. So what you're looking at right now is basically the first one and just more than a half diamonds that are making up the body of the vest. Some of you made this suggestion and I thought I had mentioned it, but yeah, there's no way I'm doing this on the back. I am planning to keep the back a solid color, so my priority is just this Argyle on the front. We are not doing that to ourselves on the back. It's going to be mostly worn under his suit jacket anyway, and so he's okay with that little, what is that called? Little consolation? What's the word? With that. So as it is on the try it on tubing, I think I'm going to steam block it and just measure where things are at currently to kind of see how the gauge is looking and all of that. But my goal right now is just to knit to the underarm, which is just after completing this second diamond that you see. And that's when I really want to know where I'm at lengthwise. So right now it's really just a matter of steam blocking it to make sure we're like on the right track, but then getting this back onto the needles as soon as possible so I could get back working on it as soon as possible to maybe get this to my dad for Easter. I thought that would be a good deadline. That gives me a month and a half-ish. So I've definitely gotten more into the swing of things with the Intarsia. Each time I change color, I have to change the bobbin that I'm working from. So that's what those dangly things are there. And I explained in the last podcast more about how I kind of determined the size of these diamonds and everything. But right now I'm very happy with how it's looking. I think it was more stressful in the beginning, but now that I'm in it, I'm very comfortable with what I'm doing. The most difficult part right now is the color of the yarn that I chose, because as I'm sure you can tell, and I'll hold it over here if I have to adjust it, the black and the navy are very similar in color, and that was an intentional choice I had made to really to replicate the concept of the Ralph Lauren sweater that this was kind of inspired by. And in the end, it should have some light gray and light blue little diagonals accents going through all of them. So I think once those are in play, you will see more of the difference between the navy blue and the black. The contrast will be a little bit more obvious. Also, in different lighting, it's easier to see. But that's where it's at right now. Dad was really happy about it. I'll see if I can get him to send me the photo of him holding it up. And I think it's going to look great on him. So that is where Dad's vest is. And I don't have a timeline for it today. So that's that. So that is everything that I have for you in this podcast episode today. I have to say that I continue to feel that 2026 started out with just an intentionality behind my knitting that I haven't felt before. And so it's been really interesting to see how that's translated in my projects working and not working and the steps I've taken to fix them. Also, not to mention, the things that I've finished so far this year have all been colorful, fun garments, chunkier yarn, and I think that that makes sense as I have some of these more complex knits on the needles. It does not surprise me at all that the things that are getting done are these chunkier knits, sleeveless knits, more colorful things that are just a little bit more satisfying to finish, but ultimately aren't going to be as much of a wardrobe staple as something like that Chantilly cardigan is, as what I hope the jelly top is going to be. And I'm just finding that really interesting as this year of knitting begins, the way that it's unfolding and the way that I wanted it to, the way that it is. It's so interesting to me. So I'm curious to know, is the same thing happening for you? Are you already like way off of your knitting goals, or have you been sticking to them? 2026 has really been something so far. So, with all of that, one more reminder, if your name is on the screen, please go ahead and send me an email. You could put giveaway in the subject line so it's a little easier for me to find. But otherwise, I really hope that you're working on a project that's bringing you a lot of joy. I hope that you will take my advice and avoid the doom knitting. Go for a walk, get outside, get a little fresh air. We all need a break sometimes. If you enjoyed this video, you can let me know by giving it a thumbs up. And if you subscribe and ring the bell, you're going to be notified anytime I post a new video. However, you can usually expect a Saturday morning upload at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And with that, a big ol' thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. All right, you guys, bye.